Hey, manic.mercurian here with your solar return reading. As you know, we're going to be covering the period of basically October 2024 all the way through October 2025. And I'm using your birth information of October 11th, 1986, 3:30 a.m. Anaheim, California. And you were in Santa Ana, California for your birthday this year and will probably be next year. So using that information, that gives us this chart. This chart is actually for Thursday, October 10th, 2024, 8:24 a.m. Santa Ana, California. It's not unusual. I believe it's because of leap years that almost every solar return chart I've done this year has been one day before the birthday. So that's okay. This, I can assure you, this is accurate. So of course, because you were born with Sun at 17 degrees Libra, that's going to be true. You know, Sun is also 17 degrees Libra in this chart, so we don't get any meaning from that placement, but we can look at the house of the Sun and we can look at all the other placements to get an idea of what to expect for this year. And I always say that although this chart is for October 10th, 2024, you can actually start to see the themes of the chart start to creep in as much as a month or two before the actual birthday. So, you know, even in August or September, you may have started to see these themes creep in. And then same for, you know, maybe late August or September of 2025 and early October, you'll already be starting to see the themes of the next year as well. It's not like everything just dramatically changes on your birthday. It's more of a gradient kind of. Okay, but yeah, I can definitely see some interesting things going on here. With solar returns, the main placements are the moon and the ascendant. If you wanted a super brief like snapshot of what to expect for your year, I would just look at the moon and the ascendant. So in this case, ascendant is in Scorpio, moon is, did I say midheaven? Moon and ascendant and moon. If I said something else, that's what I meant. Moon and ascendant are the main placements for a solar return chart. Each one gives you a really great kind of just general idea of what to expect for your year. So for this chart, you can see ascendant is in Scorpio, moon is in Capricorn. So combining the themes of Scorpio and Capricorn, these are both very intense signs. There's a lot of pressure with these signs. They're both very ambitious, goal-oriented, very strategic. So that would be your general outlook. And also too, you know, because we're a couple months in, the themes I'm about to describe, you should definitely be able to relate to, as long as I do a good job, right? So yeah, it looks like a very hardworking year for you. Looks like you're very goal-oriented, maybe more so than usual. What else? Honestly, so the main thing I noticed, I may come back to the moon and the ascendant later, but the main thing that I really see in this chart is, so I'm not gonna lie to you, this looks like one of the more difficult solar return charts that I've seen. It doesn't look like it's the end of the world. It doesn't look like there's going to be tons of suffering all year or anything like that. But it does look difficult and you may feel out of place this year. And the reason why is because there are a lot of debilitated placements in this chart. Both the luminaries, the sun and the moon, are in detriment or fall. Moon is in detriment in Capricorn, sun is in fall in Libra, Venus is in detriment in Scorpio, Mars is in fall in Cancer, Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini, Uranus is in detriment, or in fall, technically, in Taurus. Similar concepts, right? So yeah, really that's most of the planets. Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus. That only leaves Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, and Mercury not debilitated. So that is pretty extreme. So, you know, of course, each debilitated planet is different, right? But the commonality is that when you have a lot of debilitated placements, it makes you feel out of place. It makes you feel like you're not yourself. You may feel kind of like alien, like you're, what's the term? Like you're, like comfortable in your own skin. It's like you're not comfortable in your own skin. You feel like a different person or something. You may feel out of the box. I think that's a really great analogy that I like to use a lot for debilitated placements, because being outside of the box, that can be good in the sense that, you know, you're outside of the box, maybe you're more creative, you're more open to ideas that you wouldn't usually be, you're open to new perspectives, you know, you're looking at things a different way this year, and that can be very powerful. You're also thinking for yourself. Being outside of the box, you're kind of outside of the mainstream, you're not following what everyone else is doing, so there's a lot of independence and independent thinking that comes with debilitated placements. So that can be really advantageous and very powerful. But the downside is that being outside the box, you're outside of the mainstream. You may feel left out, isolated, exiled. You're not, for better or for worse, you're not just doing what everyone else is doing. You know what I mean? Like, other people may not really understand your choices this year because your choices are coming from a very independent place. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I'm always honest, but when it comes, so I've done a lot of solar return charts for, throughout the fall and things like that. And this isn't unusual. A lot of planets have been debilitated really for much of this year, but especially fall of this year. More planets tend to be debilitated in fall, but especially this year. So this isn't entirely unusual. Anyone with a birthday around yours is going to be going through similar themes as well. But yours is, you just happen to have sun and moon also debilitated. So this is probably the most debilitated planets I've seen in a solar return chart for a very long time, maybe ever, if I'm being honest. But again, it's not all bad. That debilitated planets are objectively more challenging, I would say. But there is definitely a silver lining there. Independent thinking, thinking for yourself, same thing. Being independent, doing things on your own, seeing new perspectives. Also, there's a theme with debilitated planets where they start out challenging. They may start out weak, but you can grow them. And what I find is that there's a kind of like a superpower within each debilitated placement. So, for instance, Moon in Capricorn may indicate that you're kind of emotionally unsettled. But because of that, that makes you more likely to have big goals and to be very, very ambitious. You know what I mean? So that's kind of a superpower there. Moon in Capricorn also suggests that you're not being mollycoddled, like your environment isn't super nurturing. But that makes you stronger. That makes you more independent, more resilient. So there's kind of like a bittersweet silver lining with each placement. Venus and Mars are both in water signs here, so that suggests that you're really valuing the emotionality. You're valuing emotion in your connections. You want that raw emotion. And with Venus and Scorpio, Venus and Mars are both in fall or detriment. Venus being in Scorpio is very passionate. It's maybe passionate to a fault. You may be like obsessive with your pleasures. And of course there are downsides. There are, like negative ramifications of that. But on the other hand, there can also be, you can find like incredible passion with these placements, I guess is what I'm saying. Like when it comes to whatever you enjoy, whatever you're passionate about, there's a lot of intense emotion there. So of course that can be bad, but you can also utilize that emotion. You may be very creative with your pleasures this year, especially kind of emotionally. I was going to say too, one other thing is that with Sun in Libra, you were born with Sun in fall, I think Sun in Libra is actually a much more difficult placement than many people realize. So some of this debilitated energy isn't new to you. You're used to it to some extent. So what else? Let's kind of briefly go through the debilitated placements and then I'll continue. So yeah, Sun in Libra, again, that's always true. The reason why Sun in Libra is difficult is because I believe that Libra is the most detached sign. Some people might argue and say Aquarius or maybe a different sign, but I think Sun in Libra is the most detached. And being so detached from yourself, that's what allows Libras to be so empathetic. You detach from your own emotions, so you're more open to other people's ideas or feelings. So there is, again, there's incredible value in that. That's what makes Libra so diplomatic, but it can also be difficult because you don't know yourself. You may not have like strong boundaries, especially at a young age, So you can see how it's kind of a similar story that goes through each debilitated placement. There is a kind of obvious like hardship with each one, but there's also room for growth. There's potential, and there's also, like I say, kind of like a superpower. So Sun in Libra, very empathetic, very open. Moon in Capricorn, very ambitious, very independent. Venus in Scorpio, very passionate, maybe the most passionate Venus placement. Mars in Cancer is tricky. I think Mars in Cancer, when I describe Mars and Cancer to people who have it natally, what I say is it's kind of the energy of like no one fights with my family but me. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what you may be experiencing this year. Maybe more discord, more disruption with family, or irritation with family, or whoever's closest to you, whoever you live with. There may be irritation or competitiveness there. That's why it's such an awkward place to put Mars. Cancer is the sign of home and family, so putting Mars, the god of war, in the sign of home and family, you can see why that would be dysfunctional. On the other hand, though, Mars in Cancer suggests being incredibly loyal and devoted. You know, like I said earlier, it's kind of the energy of no one fights with my family but me. So you're gonna defend your family, maybe even more so with a placement like that. Mars in Cancer is also awkward because Mars is how you fight for things. It's your ambition. And with Mars in Cancer, that means you're fighting for an emotion or you're fighting from a place of emotion. And that in itself, and of course this is applying this year. But with Mars and Cancer, so fighting from a place of emotion, that in itself has pros and cons. Like, emotion is transient, it's constantly changing, and so your ambitions, you're fighting what you fight for and how you fight for it may be constantly changing, which, you know, can be unstable. But on the other hand, fighting from a place of emotion, like let's say we're fighting and I'm fighting from a place of just like detached neutrality and you're fighting from a place of emotion and passion, guess who's probably going to win? You know, probably the person fighting from a place of emotion. So it can actually be very valuable. I actually don't think Mars in Cancer is the most out of place Mars sign. So yeah, those are the pros and cons that you're kind of dealing with in that department this year. And then Jupiter and Uranus, those are more kind of outer planets, so they're not. I'm not gonna go. I'm more gonna approach those by house rather than by sign, I think. Yeah, and those are all the debilitated placements. Oh, okay, I just remembered. I forgot for a second, but I remembered the other kind of difficult part of this chart, because there is one more kind of major difficult part of this. So yeah, just pulling up this chart, the first two things I noticed were lots of debilitated placements, but also Sun and Mercury in 12th house with Moon in 3rd house. These are two kind of difficult places for the luminaries to be, and Mercury for that matter. Moon is in the 3rd house. That means Moon was kind of at the bottom. It's at the bottom of the chart, right? So that means that it was about as far away from the top of the sky as it could possibly be for this chart, for your solar return. So that means that emotion it's the way you process emotions this year may be a little bit more detached. You're more you're having to be strong, you're having to be independent, and so to do so you may be a little bit more detached. I think this is especially true because of the Moon being at the base of the chart. If Moon was at the top of the chart, its energy would be super present, it would be affecting everything. But because it's at the bottom, it's almost like it was absent. The Moon was shining on a different part of the world for this chart. So that means that emotion, that nurturing energy, it's kind of not there. You're having, like I said, you're having to be strong, independent. You're having to do things on your own and really think for yourself this year. I do see emotion in other areas, like we talked about. When it comes to your passion, that looks like where the emotion is. That those are more kind of where the water placements are Venus and Mars, and Saturn and Neptune, which we'll talk about later. But so yeah, it's not like your year is completely devoid of emotion, but at least when it comes to your core personality, that looks like a kind of a more dry place this year because of having to be tough, independent, etc. Okay, and then let's look at Sun and Mercury in 12th house again. So 12th house is one of the most difficult houses to put planets. I'm not gonna, this is how it is. Some charts are easier than others. I don't hate this chart for you. I think there's a lot you can work with here, but I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It does look difficult. So Sun and Mercury in 12th house, that also indicates that you're very 12th house placements and transits usually have to do with isolation or being alone. So you may be alone a lot more this year. That's kind of what I'm getting at. You may have already been more maybe alone or isolated this year so far. So that in itself, it's another thing that I think is generally difficult, but there are pros and cons to it, just like everything else. So in general, I think a theme that I'm starting to see is that, well, for one, like thinking on your own, being on your own, independence, thinking for yourself, finding new perspectives. It maybe because of being so independent, you're finding new perspectives. That's a huge part of it. And the other part, what is the other part? I'm starting to forget. It had to do with Sun in 12th, Scorpio rising. Oh, right. Okay. So combining Scorpio rising, Scorpio Venus, Moon in Capricorn with Sun and Mercury in 12th house Libra, all of these suggest to me that you're really going deep. Like you're looking at things in a kind of intense way this year. You're really looking at your life in a very different way. You're looking at like the cold, hard facts, and you're going really deep. That's the best way I can explain it. So everything you look at, you like I said, you have Scorpio rising, so you're really looking at everything in kind of like a grainy, like cold way, like looking at the cold hard facts, so yeah, that's a major theme. It's something that's supported by many of the placements in this chart. But anyway, going back again to Sun and Mercury in 12th house, isolation, being alone. 12th house can sometimes be a depressing place, but it can also be very spiritual. Like that isolation, it's allowing you to process a lot and go really deep into yourself, looking at your life in a very deep way. So you may be becoming very spiritual and very I think there's almost kind of like a different intelligence that comes with 12th house as well as debilitated placements. The most challenging placements have the most potential. There's always that bright side to it. So it looks like you're becoming much stronger this year, becoming very wise, independent. I apologize if I repeat some of the same themes again, but you can see that in different places of the chart. Another thing too, Sun and Mercury in 12th house, that may indicate that you're more open to things that are kind of weird, things that are outside the box, like I mentioned. So being more open to spirituality, metaphysics, things like mysteries, like conspiracies or paranormal stuff, spiritual stuff. You may just be more open or more curious or more involved with different concepts like that. Astrology could be definitely a part of that, or other kind of spiritual things. One bright side though, Midheaven in Leo, that is a pretty sunshiny and powerful placement to have. So that's kind of interesting. There aren't a lot of planets at the top of the chart. You do have Mars in 9th house, but yeah, nothing in the 10th house. But Midheaven in Leo suggests that it's really interesting. To me, it's in stark contrast from the rest of the chart. The rest of the chart generally looks difficult. Like for instance, you actually have no fire planets in this chart. So yeah, in general, you might feel like serious or there's pressure and really looking at things in a hard way. But when it comes to how you come across in your career and your public image, that could not be more different. You're coming across confident, warm, proud. You're coming across like a Leo. And it's not just appearances. You may be more optimistic, very warm and confident when it comes to your career and your public life in general. So again, that's one of the easier midheaven placements to have, but it's not just easy, it's very powerful, very strong there as well. So although you may feel isolated this year, it looks like your career is doing pretty well. I wouldn't say your career is the main focus of this year though for you. I think you're more focusing on yourself and maybe spirituality. The career is not the main focus, but it does look like you're doing well with your career / public image. Okay. Yeah, and again, the only planet near the midheaven or the top of the chart in general is Mars in the 9th house. So although there is this theme of warmth and confidence with your career, there may also be like confrontation. You may come across like aggressive people. You may also be very ambitious as well. You may be competitive yourself when it comes to your public image or any kind of like values that surround your public life. You may be more ambitious about or maybe competitive about or finding other people that are ambitious or competitive about those things in your public life, the value. So like, I don't know if you value like hard work or whatever you value that has to do with your career and public image. That's there's like a grittiness there. There's a combativeness there. I don't know if that's a word, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. Jupiter in the 8th house is interesting. So 8th house has to do with your finances, your investments, credit cards, bank accounts, taxes, inheritance. What else? It has to do with like any, not just like the cash in your wallet. That's not really what we're talking about here. It more has to do with investments and things like that. Money that you owe other people or institutions, or money that's owed to you, or just what's the word? Or I just said this word a second ago. Investments, or not just financial investments, but also where are you investing your time, your energy, etc. So in all of these areas, Jupiter adds a lot of abundance and growth for you. Jupiter is retrograde here, so it looks like it's cautious growth, cautious abundance. I think that actually helps here, because if Jupiter were direct, it would mean tons of expansion financially, so that would be generally very positive, but it would also be unstable. Jupiter is expansion, but it's not stable. So because Jupiter is retrograde, it looks like slow, steady growth, still very positive, but also kind of cautious. So it looks like your investments may pay off this year for sure. Of course, use your own discernment, but generally speaking, Jupiter in the 8th house, really great for your finances and your investments in general. Uranus in the 7th house, that's interesting. It's also retrograde, so that does kind of put on the brakes a little bit. Uranus might be slightly less unpredictable than it otherwise would be because of being in retrograde. But Uranus in the 7th house means that your relationships, like if you have a romantic relationship or any other kinds of partnerships, if you have a best friend, but also just your interactions with others in general, those are going to be more unpredictable this year because of Uranus in the 7th house. You may meet people that are strange, unusual, quirky, genius, people that have like different ideas, people that have radical ideas. What else? And yeah, your relationships, like it wouldn't surprise me if this whole area, so Uranus isn't consistently unpredictable. Your relationships this year may be stable for a while, and then suddenly there'll be this time of unpredictability and sudden change, and then they'll be stable again for a while. There'll be these intermittent periods of instability. Okay, that's why they say Uranus is the energy of earthquakes. It's really stable for a long time, and then there's this small sudden moment of everything gets shaken up and changed. So that's the nature of your relationships this year. Stable for a while and then sudden changes. So it wouldn't surprise me if you did have a relationship suddenly start, or maybe suddenly end. Or yeah, it doesn't have to be a romantic partnership. Could be other partnerships, or again, meeting people that have the themes of Uranus, meeting people that are unpredictable, genius, etc. Provocative maybe. South Node is in the 11th house, so that also suggests that you are thriving with your career and your public image, especially like when it comes to networking or socializing. Like, looks like that comes to you pretty naturally this year. So again, it's kind of interesting to compare how, on the one hand, you're very isolated and kind of out of the box, but on the other hand, looks like you're still able to thrive with your career as well. Both of those things can be true at the same time. So it looks like it's actually very comfortable for you to network with coworkers or to be in public in general. But it looks like the real area of growth is going to be with your creative projects. Okay, so, and I say that because North Node, Neptune, and Saturn are all in the 5th house. At least this is a Placidus chart. But I kind of blend the houses together, so I don't really get that concerned about which house system I'm using, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I would read this as, so for, Neptune, Saturn, and North Node have all been roughly grouped together for some time now. All the solar return charts I've done for months have had these pretty close together, usually in the same house. Although these three energies are very different from each other, the main theme that they all have in common is that they all have to do with growth somehow. North Node shows an area of potential and success for you where you're kind of growing this year. Neptune has to do with spirituality, intuition, and then Saturn constrains things. But again, there's some element of growth and learning with all of these. So these are all affecting your 5th house. So that suggests the area where you're actually learning and growing the most is with your creative projects, your creative self-expression. So I don't know if you're an artist, or if you write, or if you have some other kind of creative outlet, but I would really encourage you to get into that more. It's not going to be easy. All three of these can be very challenging in different ways, but growth is never easy, right? To become stronger than we were, to become better, more inspired, or more artistic than we ever have been. Of course, you're going to have growth pains there, but it looks like it would be incredibly worthwhile for you. Saturn in the fifth house suggests maybe writer's block at times, or creative blocks, challenges or delays with your creativity, but it's asking you to maybe, if there's a way you can better manage your resources creatively, creative wise, or you're being asked to be more mature in some kind of way with your creative outlets. Neptune is going to bring confusion, but also inspiration to your creativity. And then again, North Node is that growth and expansion on a soul level. So that looks like a very important area. It's easy to overlook in this chart, but it is interesting. That's a very important part of your life this year. Because this is a day chart, the most fun, the most auspicious part of your life this year is your finances, because Jupiter is the theory goes that because this is a day chart, Jupiter is the most auspicious, the most, the best, most fun planet in this chart. So a lot of fun and expansion with your finances, but also Venus in the first house. That means that you yourself are having a lot of fun this year. It's mostly it's about you. You might find that you're extra diplomatic this year, extra pleasant, and able to navigate maybe complex social interactions. So it's really interesting. It's kind of a mix. You can see the chart's very scattered. A lot of mixed energies going on. But yeah, I hope I kind of made clear what the major themes are. Looks like you're really going your own way this year, doing your own thing, figuring out a lot for yourself. And let's see, I'm trying to summarize it, but honestly, there's so many kind of different things going on, it's difficult to summarize. I think those are the main themes: doing something on your own, looking at things a new way, looking at things for yourself. So yeah, it looks difficult, but it looks exciting as well, for sure. So I hope that makes sense. Hopefully that's kind of helpful or clears things up for you. Definitely let me know if you have any questions or feedback at all, but otherwise, I really hope you have a fantastic year. Thanks for this reading request, and have a great day.